Hi, I'm the Flash, and I'm the fastest man alive. Wait, what? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Player Display. Today we're going to be looking at the McFarlane DC Multiverse Speed Metal Collect to Build the Darkest Nightwave. So I'm going to be frank and honest with you guys straight off the bat. I only got this wave for the Build-A-Figure. It's one of the Build-A-Figures that where you go on eBay and he's way too friggin' expensive. But I managed to get all these together for less than $50 between a few gift cards here and a few BBTS discounts there. So I managed to get all four of them just so I could get the Build-A-Figure. As for the Flash, which is ultimately what this wave is based on, I don't know a lot of Flash stuff, but I figured I got all four of them and I got the Build-A-Figure. Might as well just make an honest-to-goodness review out of it. So let's go! The packaging is boring, as it always is with all four figures, because it's always exactly the same, except for the name of the figure, and in this case, the little image of the Build-A-Figure in the pack. So we have Wally West in this case for this particular box. Got the Darkest Night over there. Off to this side, we have Wally West. On this side, Wally West once again, and then the subtitle for this wave being Speed Metal. And off to the back, we have a very big, awesome shot of the Darkest Night figure, who is the ultimate form of the Batman Who Laughs, so we'll talk more about that comic book insanity when we get to it. Then over here, we have the two arms which come with Wally West, and then we have the other pieces that also come with these other figures down here. I know so little about the Flash, I actually have to read the damn card so I remember who everyone is. Garrick, Kid Flash, and Barry Allen. So we're just going to look through all these figures together. I don't know a whole ton of lore, so we'll do the best we can. For now, I'm just going to be reviewing them as they are, as figures, which ones I like, which ones I don't like as much, but all of them are pretty solid, so let's talk about them. So firstly, they all come with the DC Multiverse stamp, and they also each come with an individual Flash card, each with a unique bio, which is very refreshing instead of just recycling the same one on each card. This is an earlier wave, so they actually have photo shots of the figures themselves rather than the comic book artwork, which I personally prefer, but that's alright. So for any of you who are keen on reading them, we can go push in. I think I've read through all of them by now. I don't actually remember. I'm going to have to read through them again myself, but there you are. So there was Jay, and we got Wally, and we got Barry, and we got Kid Flash, who is also Wally West. It's a multiverse event, so weird things like this are supposed to happen. So in order to decide in what order I will be reviewing these figures, I literally just shuffled up the four cards, and the first one that was on top was Wally West, who happens to be my favorite of the base four. So let's have a look at this figure. I don't know a whole ton about Dark Knight's Metal and that comic run. I'm not too familiar with the comics, period, in general, but from what I know about Wally West, he has a connection with Darkest Night in that they both have a relationship to Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen, so that is why we have that little insignia up here on the top of his cowl, which I think is really cool. And that also goes to inform the rest of his suit, which is done in blue, as opposed to his usual, I believe, white and red motif that he typically has. So it's a unique suit for him, but I like how it's a lot more classic looking as opposed to the much more metalized versions that we got over here, which is why I'm a little bit more wishy-washy on the other designs that we have to look at, but easily Wally West is my favorite of the four Flashes that we will be looking at today. So starting off at the head sculpt, if I can push in a little bit there, we have a very nice looking face. They've been doing a pretty good job with faces lately, so I won't speak on them too much here between all four figures, but I mean, they got the eye color looking really nice, not too off-centered or anything. The mouth details are also very crisp. It just looks fantastic. Also like how you have the hair popping out at the top there, gets a little bit swooshy towards the front. Again, you got the Dr. Manhattan logo right in the forehead. You also have the two silver wings off on the ears. On the back, not a whole lot going on. On the chest, you have the Flash logo, also done in a very cool looking silver. I really like that against the blue. I think that's really neat looking. Also have some silver trim on the gloves over here, and the gloves are different actually, because one has a fist and one has an open, which will help with some running poses. Down here, we got some pants, which are segregated from the rest of the suit via more silver, this time being a lightning bolt motif. Going on down, I really love the ribbed design that he has going on down. That's one of the really cool things McFarlane does, is he takes what would otherwise be very plain spandexy suits and he gives them a little bit of texture, so I do like that a lot. We have some silver along the tops of the boots, and off to the back, more of the riveted designs. You also see that towards the top of the arms, and yeah, that's pretty much all. Pretty simple. He also comes with a whole bunch of Speed Force effects, so we will go through each of them one by one. We have one to attach to one of his feet. We have one to plug onto his back, which is ratcheted and branches off into two, which is really cool. And then we have 4 differently lengthed plug-in effects. And I really love these effects compared to the rest of the 3 flashes that we have, because for them, they kind of just clip around like a ring, and they're a little awkward. They tend to fall off. But here, we actually have individual ports. So on the back of Wally West here, we could take this energy effect, plug it on in, and then you can twist it whatever way you want, and it's just really neat. So you can actually see there is 2 ratchets for each of these Speed Force bolts that are coming out of his back. So I really like this guy. In order to get this guy Speed Forced up, best to have him pre-posed, and then from there you can kind of just port everything on. So got the back effect, we got a foot effect, which of course goes in the same port as the figure stands. And then as for these last 4, you can put them pretty much wherever you want. They gotta be on the gloves and the feet, but they are totally interchangeable. I really love how modular everything is. Gotta do a little bit of a twisty in order to get them in sometimes, but got one in there, got one in this glove over here. Push that arm out a little bit. I really love that open hand. I mean, interchangeable hands would have been nice, but really does give him that running look, which of course any speedster should have. And then we also have 2 more for down on the feet, looking really sweet. And there we are. Since we're going to be looking at the energy effects on all these figures, I think we're going to go ahead and skip articulation because they're demonstrated well enough when we actually have the figures running as they should be. So here's Wally West running around, looking really good, altering time and space as we know it. Next here we have, I guess, an alternate reality version of Wally West, but this time going by the name of Kid Flash, so that's what we're going to stick with to make things a little easier. Not my favorite of the lot, of course. I would go to the Wally V1 that we just looked at, but looking at this figure over here, there are still a lot of really interesting mechanical stuff going on. So going from head to toe, as we always do, he starts off with some really interesting looking goggles that branch off to the traditional ear fins, which I find really neat. Also love his haircut, looking really good. Got the grooves over there on either side. Just a really nice looking sculpt. Unfortunately, we can't see his eyes. I feel like that would be really neat if you could take the goggles off. You could see the head underneath, but still, it looks really dashing. I like him a lot. Going on down, this is where things get really interesting. I don't know how they did this, but they have this translucent red plastic embedded within the opaque plastic. That's more of this cream color. But then you got this really shiny red that's kind of just popping out. You almost feel like it would be able to light up if you had an LED in the back there or something like that. But they did that pretty much throughout this figure. Like, you can also see it on the arms over here. Like, you got these fins, and then you got the 2 fists and everything. And you got these little rings that cover around the arms. And they just really enhance this figure to make him look more energized and everything. So it's just really awesome. You also see all these various little grooves and seam lines in the suit to make it look like it's meant to bend in certain directions, which I imagine any speedster would need to as fast as they are running. Going on down to the feet, really interesting looking thorns on the back of the calves, something that I've never seen before. And lastly, of course, he has his own share of energy effects. It looks like he comes with 5. So let's try something fancy here. I'm going to have all of them. I'm going to do some editing trickery. So I'm going to take these energy effects, I'm going to throw them at the figure, and all of a sudden, boom! Look how crazy and electric looking he is, guys. It's like magic. But anyways, we got all the energy effects on, and I don't love these, I will be honest. They look cool and everything. I love the plastic, I love the red, but it's really irritating to get them on. I mean, the neck piece is an exception. You simply need to tuck the head through a hole, and then everything just fits right on. But as for the pieces that go on the arms and the feet, it's a little bit ambiguous as to what piece is supposed to go where. Whereas on Wally West, everything just simply had a peg and a hole, on Kid Flash over here, they're kind of like little clamps. Like, if I take this one off, you see it comes out to this little ring over here, and then And the nice thing is you could put them wherever you want. I could put them up here on the shoulder if I really wanted to. Actually, that's not too bad. And then I could also put them on the wrist, maybe, not quite. But, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's such an ambiguous shape. It's hard to say where exactly it's supposed to fit on. So they're very, very modular in that you can put them wherever you want. But it's not always going to stay there. So it's just a little annoying. I prefer parts that are a little more defined, like we just saw in the Wally West. But in this case, I mean, not the worst thing ever. I mean, just kind of clamp it somewhere. I found it's best just over those arm fins, gives them a little support. And on the feet, they kind of work there too. Like here, we can turn them in, turn them to the side, see, and then everything kind of just flops around. So I don't love these effects, so I'm just going to remove those for now. Then when you get to size comparisons, they won't be in the way. So took those off. And then I'm okay with just the one up here. So yeah, there's Kid Flash for you. Next, we probably have the most famous version of the Flash being Barry Allen, and he gets a brand new suit over here, and I'll be honest, I don't love it. It feels very clunky to me. I don't really get it. As much as black and red is my favorite color combination in pretty much every world, I mean, look at my freaking backdrop, I don't really love it on this figure. It doesn't seem like it has a nuance to it. It feels very thrown together, so I don't love it that much. But that's more an going towards the comics. As a figure that's meant to represent how he looked in the pages, I mean, yeah, they did a great job. This is how he looked, so can't really get mad at this figure. Pulling on in, we actually have some eyes to look at again this time, and I don't know what it is, but he looks very tired or sad. It's something I think about the mouth, the squintiness of the eyes. He just feels very done dirty. He doesn't look like he's in a good mood. I don't know, I would have preferred like a smirk or something like that. I feel like that would make me enjoy this figure a little bit more. But yeah, it's still a good looking head sculpt. You got the red fins going off from the ears, as is for pretty much every Flash design except for Jay. We'll look at him soon. Down to the torso, something I don't understand is he has ripped off sleeves, but I'd suspect that this isn't a fabric suit. It's supposed to be like a latex, right? But what the hell do I know? It's a comic character, so physics doesn't really matter, especially when you're talking about a Flash character. But we do have, to its credit, the classic Flash logo in the chest, which is very nice. You have the white and you got the red. And then on the arms, I get really confused. I don't know if this is supposed to be a tattoo or some sort of sleeve augmentation. I'm not sure. But you can see it's not printed on or painted, it's raised in the sculpt. So if you were to take all the paint away, the lightning bolt would still be there. But I just don't understand this from a cosmetic perspective. I don't know what it's supposed to be. And that's what bothers me about this figure. I feel like if he did have the black sleeves going all the way down, I'd probably like him a lot more. But these arms really just bug the crap out of me from an aesthetic standpoint. I just don't understand them. And then they come down to these fins over here on the forearms, and then it's got really tiny wrist joints. I didn't even notice that before. They're really small. I mean, I guess I would give him some more range. But yeah, I don't like the arms. They feel odd to me. And while he has two fists, they do vary. You see one is totally bare. On one, he's got like brass knuckles or something, or a wrap. I don't see why he would need them. He's the fastest man alive, so it doesn't seem like there's a point to it. And going down to the waist, some neat little flourishings here with this gloved-looking design. You also have this electric bolt of red, kind of like what we saw on Wally West, and similarly to Kid Flash, now I think about it. Down to the knees, I don't love these knee pads as much. I feel like, again, if we had black sleeves and then we did away with these knee pads completely, I'd enjoy this figure a lot more. But I guess it's more to feed into that speed metal aspect that these figures are trying to go for. But here they are. I mean, they are what they are. They got some studs on them. Not that I'm not a fan of studs. I actually quite love them, but for a Flash figure, they just feel very strange, at least for this particular costume. And then down to the boots. Boots are boots. I say it again. Been a little while, I know. This Flash also comes with 4 energy effects, whereas Kid Flash came with 5, and this time they are also in red, but they are a different shade than what we saw in Kid Flash. You could see they're a little bit more saturated, a little bit more bright, and less see-through. I actually prefer the plastic that was used for Kid Flash over here. But all that being said, let's see what they look like on the actual figure. And here we go, as my fridge starts to get really noisy again, so forgive me for that. But these energy effects are admittedly better than the ones we got on Kid Flash. They're not as loose, not quite as flimsy. They're a lot tighter, so I don't know if it's a difference in the plastic or has something to do with the shape, but you can see nothing's shaken off or anything like that. You turn them around, adjust these effects, kind of swivel them on the wrists and the feet, and they do a much better job. And yeah, if you just want to pose them up quickly, oh, there goes one. I mean, it's going to happen when you start moving them around a little too much, but yeah, you can see it's a little tighter right there as opposed to just this ambiguous circle like we saw on Kid Flash, so I definitely prefer these more. Yeah, kind of works. It feels a little bit off. I mean, maybe if we swivel that effect around, and I don't know why this would be going straight up, maybe this would be better up here on the thigh, and that looks a little bit nicer. Looks pretty cool. And to sum up the main four figures of this pack, we have Garrick, the very first Flash that DC Comics has ever seen. Here he has a total speed metal makeover, which again, I don't love. I have the classic version of this figure, which I prefer a lot more. I mean, he had like alternate hands and stuff, so that definitely made him a lot sweeter. But if you're into this metal eyes design, then this is probably going to be your favorite of the set, because here he has straight up just metal plating everywhere. Here we have the head sculpt, which is a little hard to see under this very iconic, although very overshadowing headpiece over here. I guess you'd call it a hat or something, a plate. I really don't know what you'd say, but it looks pretty neat. Again, it's more stylized for that whole metal thing going on. It has the two wings, as it should, but then it also has these yellow streaks going down, and you'll also notice that the plastic is a little bit warped. If you turn it up to the light a little bit, you can see under the helmet, it has very good face sculpt going on, and he has like this Braveheart war paint on him. I don't know how I feel about that. I can't say I love it, but it's there. Although I will say it's kind of neat how that blends into the lightning bolt design that he has on his shirt, so that's kind of interesting. He also has this new waistcoat that is unique from the classic look for him, where it's got these metal clips and a blue overall color, looking kind of interesting. Also, if you don't like it, you could even peel it back and take it off completely, because it doesn't go on to the rest of the arms, because there's no sleeves to it that are molded on the rest of the arm. So if you wanted to remove it, then he might look a little bit more classic looking, so that's an option for you. As for the undershirt, it looks like it's meant to be short-sleeved because it merges onto some bare arms that we have here. Would have been nice to have a little bit of sculpt here to indicate the end of a sleeve, but really not a big deal. Down the arms, we have these really big old gauntlets. I guess they're cool. I prefer them on a different character, but not for a Flash. That just feels very odd to me. Again, they're very hyper-stylized. I don't know how many times I've said that, but it just feels very strange to me. Then down here, we have some red gloves, two fists, both identical, unlike Barry Allen. No knuckle dusters for this guy. Have the red lightning bolt, as we talked about, and also a chain belt, which is very unique from the other ones. Again, I feel like you could remove this piece and you can get him closer to his classic design if you really wanted to. Down here, more of those spiked kneecaps, which I don't love. And also, I really find it odd how they executed the sides and back of the knees. You could see they tried painting in that silver band over here, which I appreciate, but they look very clunky. They look really odd and broken looking, so I don't love that. It would have been nicer if they painted inside of there, but that's probably asking for a lot. But that's okay. I mean, I'm going to stare at my figures from the front anyhow, so really not a big deal. Down here, we already kind of talked about these. We have some leg gauntlets, leg guards. Yeah, it's probably the right way to call them for the feet over here. Down here, you got some red shoes, looking like they're made of a fabric or something. How comfortable must he be in these? This Flash comes with 4 energy effects, this time done in a mustard yellow. They are a little different from the ones that we saw with Wally West over here. You can see that they are a lot more transparent looking, not as saturated. I'm not sure which color I prefer. I guess I prefer these more. They're a little more subtle. And these ones, I don't know. I feel like they're a little bit too heavy-handed, but I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. But anyhow, let's do what we did before. And once again, they're a little bit on the tighter side, so that made things a lot easier to energize this guy up. And you can see right here, it was a little bit more obvious as to which energy effect went where, because you can see these two effects are a lot more on the symmetrical side, and they're a little smaller compared to the leg counterparts down here. They're a little bit more swooshy upwards, so makes it a little bit more apparent where they're supposed to go. You can go ahead and pull one off, and you can see it is a tighter loop that is meant to go around gauntlets. And to the figure's credit, one benefit that it does have from having those gauntlets is it does allow the energy effects to have a little bit of leverage onto the figure. So it does help it a little bit cosmetically. And last, but certainly not least, in fact, perhaps the most that this pack has to offer, is the Build-A-Figure Darkest Night. And this guy has a very bonkers story. I've actually done my homework on him, as opposed to the other Flash figures we just looked at. So effectively, this is the final form of the Batman Who Laughs. For those of you who don't know that character, which is okay, it's pretty much just exclusive to the comics, not any movie or anything. He was a version of Batman from the negative multiverse, where he effectively was gassed by the Joker as he killed him. Then he wound up killing the rest of the Bat family, traveling to other Earths to find other corrupted versions of Batman, ultimately wound up dying himself, had a contingency plan to have his consciousness transferred into a Dr. Manhattan body, and thus here we have the Darkest Night, perhaps the most powerful version of Batman that there is, but I don't know multiverse stuff, so that might just be a very watered down CliffsNotes version. All I know is I love Batman, and this is a really interesting looking interpretation of him. I guess I've always fancied the idea of a nightmare, just totally bad Batman. I mean, especially if you turn him around, one thing I really wanted to say is he reminds me a lot of Guillermo del Toro, just the posture that he has, little wispy bits of smoke or mist that's coming off his body. I do give props to Todd McFarlane for making certain decisions with this figure, especially since we didn't see a whole ton of this particular design in the comics. Not that he was short-lived necessarily, but when we did see him, he was totally in silhouette. So in this case, when it came to getting him in plastic form, he's totally done in a translucent purple plastic, which I think works really well. I just love the way that it captures the light. You can see here, it's a little lighter where the mist kind of strays off, and then it gets much darker when it gets to the core body that is making up the rest of this figure. And yeah, it's just really interesting design. No idea where the hell I'm going to put him on my shelf because he's so tall. We'll look at him in size comparisons once again, but he's just absolutely fantastic. So here's the head sculpt, which I really love. This is actually the only instance of paint on this entire figure, just the eyes, the inside of the mouth, and the jaw, and that's it. But it looks absolutely incredible. I love the ears. Again, it's done in that translucent plastic, so you can see the light shine through. And then it gets much darker when you actually get to the main head sculpt. And also he has an articulated jaw, which is very nice. I love when you close it up, it totally hides the yellow and the white within the mouth. But then when you open it again, it looks like it's glowing out, and it feels very ethereal and cosmic and spooky. Although the one complaint I have with this figure is it seems like the jaw is a little bit misaligned. If you look at the two vampire teeth on the upper and lower jaws here, they don't line up exactly right, if you can make that out. So that's not perfect, but honestly from a distance it's not going to matter. And also he's supposed to be like an ambiguous out of this world character, so if he's a little off, I kind of accept that. Then I guess we'll just skim through the rest of the body. I don't know how to describe everything that's going on here, but there's just a lot of interesting and beautiful shapes going on. Mostly it's just this very misty, smoky, foggy effect going throughout, but even when you get to mid-torso right here, you can make out some abs, so that's really neat. You have a little bit of concrete structure for anatomy in there to build this guy up a little bit. And down here, I guess another minor complaint I have, although not a big deal, is the knees and the elbows as well are made of a solid opaque plastic rather than the translucent plastic that makes up the rest of this figure. Honestly though, it's not very noticeable, especially from a distance, and the color kind of just blends in, so really not a big deal. And I guess all that's left to talk about is the hands. No interchangeable hands, but the ones that he comes with are very great. They're some long, open clawing hands. And down on the feet, we have some nasty looking digits over here, and yeah, just very slimy and gooky looking. I really love what they did with this figure. We will go ahead and actually talk about articulation with him because we kind of know what to expect with all the Flash figures, but for him, he's so big and different, I do think he is worth talking about. So as for the neck and the head, he was kind of already down, but then he comes up that much, which is great, so you can have him really hunching over if you want. The articulation on this guy is absolute madness, which is why I really wanted to talk about it. Once again, the jaw articulates open and closed, swivel all the way around. Also have a little bit of tilt to give him some personality. Down to the arms, 360 swivel. Ratcheting shoulders over here, that hit about 90. Swiveling bicep, got your elbows, got your wrists, which look like they hinge in and out, but you can swivel them as well so they can go up and down too, which is very good. Torso, it seems like we have a ball joint above and below the abs, so that gives him quite a bit of movement, which is great. So you can have him standing up straight, or you can have him all the way down here, and then again, he can move the head up. So a lot of options with this figure. He also stands very well, so we'll show that off later. He also got some swivels that are, again, thanks in part to the ball joints that we just looked at. As for legs, they do not quite a full splits, but they do ratchet everywhere, so that's very good for helping him hold his stance in whatever pose you want. As for legs, they come out to 90. However, the knees do not come out straight, which is really interesting. I prefer them like this anyways, but just an interesting choice on Todd's part. As for crunching them in, they go all the way. As for ankles, they're very heavily ratcheted, which again helps them stand up, but they go that much back. They go that much forward. He also has toe articulation, as if you didn't need any more joints. And then you got your rocker. So, absolutely fantastic looking and moving figure. And again, if you wanted to see what it's like to stand him up, I got him in a pretty alright pose, actually, just on accident. So, let's work from there and see what he looks like down here. Plant the feet down. You heard that ratchet, right? Pretty loud, which is a good thing. That means he'll stand up just fine. So there he is, looking great. Turn to the side. You can see the profile. It's kind of like a roaring position, I guess, or something like that. But yeah, this guy is just a ton of fun. Really happy to have an evil version of Batman. Looking awesome. Now, as for size comparisons, I have everyone stood up as straight as I possibly can, though once again, keep in mind that the Darkest Knight has his knees locked in an already bent in position, so they cannot be totally out straight, but that being said, he's still a giant compared to everyone else. As for the Flashes, it seems like Kid Flash is the shortest, and it seems like Jay Garrick is the biggest and tallest. It looks like Wally and Barry are about the same. As for some other size comparisons, I know we gotta slide over a little bit. We have my modified Michael Keaton Batman from McFarlane, and we also have my head-swapped NECA Christopher Reeves Superman, who we just had a look at. But as always, all size comparisons must end with a floppy camera, and also Star Wars The Black Series, Mecha-Muck! Well, my Flash brothers, it seems like he's at it again. The Darkest Knight is stealing the Speed Force.
What? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just standing here. It's because I'm purple, isn't it?
Oh, it's not you? Then who could have... Hey, you!
Ow!
Right.
They're gonna get me! I'm running! I'm getting the hell out of here!
As I said before, I literally got these figures just so I could get the Build-A-Figure in the center here, who I think is absolutely awesome and is the best part of this 4-pack, which is technically a 5-pack, I guess. But that being said, I also wanted to review these Flashes objectively, and honestly, I'm not too sure how I feel about them. I definitely love the Wally West. I really love the energy effects that he comes with. As for the other ones, though, I'm a little bit wishy-washy. The energy effects and their ability to actually clip onto the figures is kind of sloppy and inconsistent. Like, it was very good for the Barry and Jay, but for Kid Flash, they were sliding all over the place. And also, I feel like not just Speed Metal, but the Dark Knight's metal figures are very niche figures to be releasing. I could see why not everybody is after these 4 figures. It's interesting to see the market, because these 4 figures on their own, not too hard to get, but getting the Darkest Knight on his own is actually a real task. So that's why I actually went after the 4. They were cheap enough to justify getting them only so I could get the Build-A-Figure, who I prefer the most. As for these 4, I could really go either way, except for the Wally. I do prefer him, as I've said numerous times. So ultimately, I got these figures just to check them out and get the Build-A-Figure. Objectively, how are these figures? Aesthetically, they are accurate to the comics. In terms of engineering, I don't love the energy effects a ton, but the articulation's good. I know we didn't talk about that with every single figure, but they move fine. It's just cosmetically, that's really going to be the thing that makes it or breaks it for you, this whole wave. That being said, I will give this wave credit in that they found a way to engineer that translucent effect into Kid Flash. I'd love to see that with more figures in the future. Like, imagine if they had a Green Lantern and they replaced the logo with that same glowy looking plastic or something like that, obviously in green. That would be really pretty looking. So this guy, he's not my favorite of the wave, but he could speak to a lot of interesting figures that we'd be seeing in the future from a mechanical standpoint. So I'm really curious to see what Todd would do with that. So, all that being said, interesting wave, not for everyone, but it's objectively sound. It's solid, it does what it needs to do, and the Build-A-Figure is absolutely badass. I hope you enjoyed this quick little review, and if you enjoyed, then please, as per usual, be sure to
Like, comment,
ring the bell to be notified of our latest arrivals.
And subscribe.
This is the editor speaking, humbly reminding you to support the pod Patreon in the description to guarantee new content every single week.
Thank you guys very much for watching. Rock on, and I will see you all later.